For decades, the Iranian regime has claimed to speak for the Iranian people, and today many voices in the West claim to speak for them too. Journalists, activists, commentators, many of them are condemning Israel, condemning America, condemning this war, and insisting that the Iranian people do not want this confrontation. But my guest says something very different. He says those voices do not represent the Iranian people. He says millions of Iranians have been living under a brutal dictatorship for 47 years, a regime that tortures, imprisons, and executes its own citizens, and that many Iranians see this moment not as the beginning of a war, but as the possible end of the regime that has ruled them with fear for nearly half a century. Joining me today once again is Younes Sadaghiani, an Iranian-born political commentator, investigative journalist, and outspoken critic of the Islamic Republic, who has spent years exposing the regime's corruption, brutality, and propaganda. Younes, welcome.
Thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure. So before I start, I just want to quickly speak about something because I just saw this on social media. And there's a lot of Muslims, or there's like a lot of pro-Palestinian mobs, I should say, from Pakistan and Iraq, a lot of pro-Palestinian people online saying, well, the only reason that Donald Trump started hitting Iran is because he wants to distract from the Epstein files and how he's a pedophile and stuff like that. And I would like to say to my fellow pro-Palestinian fellow Muslims that Muhammad himself married a 9-year-old. And in the Quran, it says that when you die, you are gifted with 72 virgins and you get wine from young-looking boys. So your religion and your prophet, it was far worse than Jeffrey Epstein. So the fact that you have the audacity to even speak about Epstein, look, Epstein was a terrible person. But just for you to say the only reason Donald Trump is starting this war is because he wants to distract from him, even though he's completely exonerated and completely cleared by the courts, to say he started this war because he wants to distract from the Epstein files, is just absolutely ridiculous. You are imbeciles. You do not know what you're talking about. And the collapse of the Islamic Republic will be good for Palestinians because the Islamic Republic is the one funding Hamas, funding Hezbollah. When the Islamic Republic of Iran goes, then Israel has no reason to start any wars with any of its neighbors. So it will be in the benefit of Palestinians. But unfortunately, you're just completely uninformed and uneducated, or maybe you're willfully blind to see that.
Younes, you said something very striking recently. You said that when you heard the news about the death of Iran's supreme leader, you were happy from the bottom of your heart. Can you explain why?
I think every single Persian, every single true Persian person is happy. 90% of the Persian diaspora are celebrating. And the reason is that, we were ruled by Ali Khamenei for 37 years. The Islamic Republic lasted for 47 years, but Ali Khamenei, 37 years. And during his reign, the Islamic Republic became a mafia state or a terrorist state. It became a mafia state for the people living in Iran. It was mob rule. And he basically used his powers to build the IRGC, and he made himself the kingpin and killed Iranians, tortured Iranians for very basic crimes like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, women not covering their hair, started sending money abroad to proxy groups, started spending all that money on missiles, on the nuclear facilities, whilst the Iranians were starving. When the Iranians didn't have water, they didn't have the basic necessities to live. So he spent all that money whilst he was killing innocent Iranians. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, he is so extremely incompetent that even though he spent all that money on missiles, on proxies, and on nuclear, he's getting beaten embarrassingly by Israel and America. Imagine spending all of Iran's resources for 37 years on the one thing that you're supposed to be good at. But then it turns out you're not even good at that. So it just shows you that these terrorists, they have empty brains. They're uneducated. As Marco Rubio puts it, lunatics that have this death cult. They worship death, and they were ruling over Iranians for 30 or 47 years. So every single Persian person I know is celebrating right now. So please don't listen to Western commentators such as Tucker Carlson, such as Jen Kruger, such as Candace Owens, such as all of these imbeciles that claim to know more than the Iranian people. Iranian people are happy and they're celebrating in the streets.
What do you think it is that people like Chen Kruger and Anna Kasparian, to add another thing on Piers Morgan, she's trying to downplay the amount of civilians that were killed in Iran.
Right.
Why do you think What is their goal? I know they hate Israel, but anything else that's going on over here?
Look, the funny thing about Anna Kasparian is that she was parroting Hamas numbers for 2 years. When Hamas came out and said 70,000 people were killed, she was the first one to come on air and scream, 70,000 people. Israel committed genocide and, pushing these blood libels on the Jewish people and Israel. But then all of a sudden, when there's verified reports of 36,000 people dying, I think it's personally more because a lot of the bodies haven't returned to the victims. And the plan was that the Islamic Republic is going to withhold these bodies just in case America and Israel attack, so they can blame it on Israel and America. But then we had verified reports from inside Iran, 36,500 people have died. Okay? But then Anna Kasparian doesn't want to believe it. So that's what I call selective outrage and moral bankruptcy of these people. They don't really care about human lives. They don't really care about democracy. They're just united in their hate against Israel.
Yeah, and that's what we saw with the pro-Palestinian marches in the past 2 years, 2.5 years, but we barely saw people marching when the Islamic Republic was mowing down their own civilians. You see a hypocrisy in the West, and don't you think it's time that we point it out clearly?
No,
Right.
of course. And I've been trying to point it out for the last 2.5 years. However, nothing, unfortunately, gets through these thick people's skulls. They are deranged. I think being pro-Palestinian is a derangement. That doesn't mean you don't care about Palestinian people, but then you call out the nonsense that is surrounding it, that somehow Israel wants to commit a genocide, or they somehow enjoy killing women and children, or that they target them on purpose. Whereas the Islamic Republic does all those things. Islamic Republic targets women, targets children, targets civilians. They killed their own people for protesting. Now, does anyone die in Israel for protesting against the government?
Yeah. And it's interesting that Cenk Uygur put up a poll the other day about who's more evil, Ali Khamenei or Bibi Netanyahu. And overwhelming majority was voting for Khamenei. So it just goes to show that people like that are the minority. People like Piers Morgan give them a platform. And it's very, very unfortunate.
Unfortunately, I don't think they are the minority. I think there's still a substantial number of people. Another person is Mehdi Hassan, which I absolutely despise from the bottom of my heart. And he is the chief misinformer. He's a Shia Muslim as well. So his idol, Ayatollah Khamenei, died. So sad days for him. But these people, the thing is, they come to the West. They use Western democracy. They use Western freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And then they use that against the West. Instead of using that power to call out the extremist regimes, to call out terrorism, the countries their parents fled from, they use that power to start hitting the United States, to start hitting the West. Now, I'm not saying that the West is not out of any sin, okay? We know that America committed some sins in Afghanistan, in Iraq, even Israel, okay? You can call it, miscalculations or whatever, right? But the Iran scenario is different. The Iran scenario is that we have a bunch of educated people that used to have democracy now coming into the streets and then asking America and Israel for help, right? It's not comparable to the Iraq situation or to the Afghanistan situation, because Afghanistani or Afghan people never came to the streets and never protested for America to attack. Same with Iraq. Also, let's not forget, Afghans and Iraqis, they are Islamic fundamentalists, most of them. Whereas Iranians are not. Iranians are not even Muslim. Their original religion is Zoroastrian. So I think they make this false equivalence or this false comparison about, look at what happened to Iraq. Look at what happened to Afghanistan. Iran's going to be the same. I don't deny America made a huge mistake invading Iraq and Afghanistan. They didn't need to put boots on the ground. They didn't need to, if they're going after Osama bin Laden and after Saddam Hussein, they could have done exactly what they done to Khamenei. Just aerial strikes, no need, boots needed. So I understand that some people in the West have this bitter taste from those wars in their mouth, because these are the wars that they lost fundamentally, because they replaced Taliban with Taliban after spending 20 trillion. So I understand that. I think Trump is more clever than that. And I think Trump knows that by freeing Iranians from the Islamic Republic, all of a sudden you're going to have this amazing culture with educated population, open-minded people, rich resources, rich culture coming into the market and stabilizing the Middle East, which by extension is going to help Israel. It's going to help all the Gulf states, such as UAE, Qatar, Saudi. Even Mohammed bin Salman is now in favor of striking Iran. So it's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to have a ripple effect for the whole Europe. and by extension, America. And I think Trump understands that perfectly.
I saw people like Zoran Mamdani, the
Yep.
mayor of New York, obviously condemning the war with Iran. And then I heard that he's the same exact sect of Islam as the Islamic Republic.
Yep.
So, I was not surprised after that. Are people basically not looking at the war clearly, basically looking at their own preferences and then going like that? Like you mentioned, Mehdi Hassan, he hates Israel with a passion, and anything that Israel's doing, he's going to stand against it. Are people not looking at the reality just because of their own biases?
I mean, that's what you call sectarianism, unfortunately. And sectarianism is rampant now in the West. And unfortunately, it's the Muslims that are the most sectarian because, they vote in blocks. We had an election recently in the UK, a by-election, in which Reform lost a seat to the Green Party. And it's because of the Muslim bloc. The Muslims, they vote together and they vote in sectarian lines. They don't actually ask, what is the best policy? What is the best for the country? They ask, how can I further my own agenda? And unfortunately, the West is in a crossroads, because if you allow people like Mamdani, if you allow people like Mehdi Hassan and people of that ilk, then you will lose your identity. And I think Israel is at the forefront of that. And I think by Iran being freed, you actually push back on a lot of these people, because we are from the Middle East. We lived under the Islamic Republic. We can go and stand in front of Mehdi Hassan and Zohran Mamdani and tell them, you're wrong. Whereas if an Israeli Jewish person or a white person says that, they call him a racist or an Islamophobe.
Exactly. Now, are people celebrating quietly or openly in Iran? We're seeing videos of online of celebrations, people chanting "Bibi" from their
Yeah.
window. How real are those? Do ordinary Iranians see this as a war or as a liberation?
Of course, they see it as a liberation. As I said in the beginning of this interview, 90% of Iranians are celebrating. So don't listen to the morons, for a lack of a better term, that somehow are upset on Iranian people's behalf. It was the same case with Venezuela. Venezuelans, both inside and outside of Venezuela, were celebrating. That you had these Western commentators being upset for Venezuela. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. The Islamic Republic has been occupying force for 47 years. So this is not starting a new war. This is ending a 47-year war. This is ending a nightmare. So when people say, oh, we don't want another war, this is not a war. The war started back in 1970. It was like a Cold War in the Middle East. This is the Berlin Wall moment. We're not starting, we're ending a new war. And I think, Donald Trump, he said himself that his favorite president was Reagan. And I think the fact that Reagan stood as the Berlin Wall fell, I think Donald Trump is doing that in the Middle East with the fall of the Islamic Republic.
And talk about how Israel is not actually an enemy of the Iranian people. If anything, Israel cares deeply for the Iranian people, and that's why they had to do this.
No, 100%, but also it's in the benefit of Israel. It's in the benefit of America at the end of the day, because you're going to have a war every 2 years. I'm not saying they didn't do it to help us, but also they had their own calculations, because at the end of the day, every state is self-interested. What's in it for them? And on Israel's behalf, they knew that Islamic Republic is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism, and they are the primary target. So getting rid of them will benefit them directly. But also it will be great for the Middle East. I think there was a calculation done on behalf of all the Gulf states. UAE now is against them. Saudi is now against them. Even Qatar is now considering hitting them. So it's quite an interesting turn of events. But also in terms of the United States, Iran was about to develop ballistic missiles ranging 10,000 miles, which could hit the eastern coast of America. But then, if you want peace in the Middle East, if you want, the Donald Trump wanted to make investments or has already made investments and with this Gulf states or Saudi Arabia, UAE, and he knew with Islamic Republic being there, the Middle East will never truly be in that kind of position that it could compete as a bloc with Europe and America. And he wanted to make that happen because at this moment in time, majority of the countries in the Middle East are allies of America. And this is the final piece of the puzzle. Once the Islamic Republic of Iran falls, then you will have the Abrahamic Accords, which will normalize relations between Israel and the Arab states. And then in a few years' time, we will have something called the Cyrus Accords, which will normalize relations with Iran. All of this will be a pushback to Russia. All of this will be a pushback to China. So everybody wins.
Yeah. Did it surprise you that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, started attacking all the Arab states around them? I know it's not a surprise that they attacked Israel. That was clear that would happen. But the fact that they attacked everybody else, did that surprise you at all? And why would they do that?
Because they're trying to cause fear, because they're clutching at straws, because, they have nothing, they know they can't really hit Israel because you have the Iron Dome and the Laser Dome. And obviously they can't hit America. They're too powerful. So the only next option they have is to randomly start shooting rockets at neighboring countries just to cause fear. But it just shows how incompetent and frankly stupid they are. Because now all these Arab states are going to be against them. UAE is not against them. Kuwait is not against them. Saudi is not against them. And Qatar, their main ally in the Persian Gulf, is not against them. And all these countries are probably going to strike back. Or if they even don't strike back, they're going to defend Israel and America. So look, I use this analogy of, a crazy person, you have a crazy person, right? And, this crazy person has got a knife in his hand. And, for 47 years, he was telling Israel, I'm going to kill you with this knife. If you come here, I'm going to stab you. And, saying the same to America, death to America, death to Israel. And then, they get shot by America and Israel. And then they start trying to stab people around them just to cause damage to people around them because they can't reach America and Israel. So like, okay, but it's just a crazy person. And what we're trying to do fundamentally is to take this knife away from this crazy person. And by taking that knife away from them, which is the ballistic missiles and the nuclear, you neutralize the threat, you allow their population to rise up, which will cause a revolution, and Iran will be back where it belongs to be in the world stage.
Yeah. I don't know if you watched the United Nations, but obviously the Islamic Republic has a spokesman over there who spreads his lies and confronts the United States and confronts Israel, especially about this war. Do you think that they should have a voice over there?
No, I think the Islamic Republic has lost complete legitimacy, and I'm surprised they even allow them in the United States, in the United Nations. The fact that the United Kingdom hasn't recognized them as a IRGC, as a terrorist organization, is beyond me, because the European Union has. And I just think this government has lost complete legitimacy, especially after they killed 50,000 of their own people. I think after that, there is no legitimacy in this government, and they shouldn't be allowed anywhere, as a matter of fact. If I was Europe and if I was the UK and if I was USA, I would kick out every single embassy member, every single diplomat, anyone who is even affiliated with the Islamic Republic in terms of business. I would confiscate their buildings and their businesses and their money. I would say the same with the UAE and Saudi and Qatar. Anyone that has any money in there, confiscate, because that's what they done to a lot of Iranians, by the way. In 1979, a lot of Jews fled Iran, a lot of Christians fled, a lot of people in general fled. And guess what the government done? They just confiscated their properties, and they went and lived in them themselves, or they spent that money on their own ends. So I think that's exactly what should happen to them.
Now, we know that Israel hit a lot of the leaders and a lot of the people that were going to take the place of the leaders. What do you think is the next step? How powerful still is the IRGC inside Iran? What do you want to see Israel doing and America doing? I heard rumors that the CIA is trying to arm people. What are your thoughts on the next steps of how we can fully get rid of this regime?
I think the Islamic Republic is very weak. I think they're almost close to collapse. I saw some videos of them just shooting people in the balconies that were chanting death to Khamenei, death to, Durud or Bibi June, which means I love Benjamin Netanyahu and stuff like that, and Trump and stuff. So they're so weak now. They can't get their hands on Israelis and Americans. So they start shooting people in the balconies. That's how pathetic they are. So I think they're close to collapse. Look, I've heard some reports of America is trying to arm the Kurdish alliance to try to maybe establish a Kurdish state. Personally against that, not because I'm against the Kurds, but because I think that will lead to separation. And I'm not a separatist. I think Iran should stay as it is in terms of its geographical integrity. So I'm not a separatist. So I think everyone should unite behind a common leader, which at this moment in time seems to be Shahzadeh Reza Pahlavi. Then in 2 or 3 years' time, maybe we can have a referendum and see what we want. Maybe some Kurdish people want to vote and they want to separate. Maybe they don't. Maybe we will expand Persia, and maybe we will take people like Armenia under our wings so they don't get attacked by Azerbaijan all the time. Who knows? So I think these are things that need to be decided. But at this moment in time, it's tricky. It's tricky because, Trump doesn't also want what happened to Iraq, because what happened during the Iraq war is that we fired all the policemen, all the ministers, everyone. And, it was chaos because we couldn't manage. So we need some people that are already working inside the government to stay, to run those admin roles, to run those administrative day-to-day roles, so we don't have complete chaos. But I think the best option is to possibly find or possibly just transition to Shah Reza Pahlavi and then have a referendum in 2 or 3 years' time.
Were you surprised by how deeply Mossad had infiltrated Iran and the ranks of Iran and all the stories that you're hearing?
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure if this is true, but Qani, Ismail Qani, is he a Mossad agent or is that just a rumor?
I don't know.
Qani, I don't know if you know him. He looks quite Jewish. Do you know where he looks what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But apparently he's a Mossad agent. Look, the thing is the fact that they knew when Khamenei even uses the toilets, to the point they had that much kind of intel. They knew when he's eating, when he wakes up, when he goes to breakfast, when he's going to have his meetings throughout the day. So imagine they have people that close to Khamenei that knows everything. Then the rest of the Islamic Republic, they're doomed. I think their hand is revealed. Their hand is revealed for being incompetent. They're a paper tiger, as I said, and it's just a matter of time. Just what we want is to have the best outcome. We don't want Iran to ensue in chaos. So am I surprised? No, not really, because we've had the series Tehran. We had reports, and we had people like Catherine Shackdown and all these people just infiltrating at the highest levels. There's a lot of Jewish Farsi speakers still inside Iran. Maybe they managed to penetrate. There's a lot of Persian Jewish peoples. I'm not surprised now. I would have been surprised maybe 1 or 2 years ago, but then after the there's instances and occurrences that happened in 1 or 2 years now, I'm not that surprised now.
Yeah. It seems that I heard that they hacked all the street cameras. And so that was one way that they were able to see everything. But there's a lot of rumors, and I think the rumors are kind of striking fear in the enemies. You've got to watch your back. Now, the key question in any revolution is always the military. Will the army stand with the regime or with the people? How loyal is the IRGC to the regime now that the Ayatollah has died, the leaders have died, have been killed? Do you think that parts of the military can defect or?
I think they should, because I don't even think it's too late. And at the end of the day, if I was an army member, Artish member, or police officer, I would defect to the people, because if the regime falls, then they are the first ones to be targeted by the people themselves for having their backs to the people. So I don't think it's a good strategic calculation on their behalf. The Islamic Republic is over. Okay, it's over. It's just a matter of time before we get the small print. But as soon as Khamenei died, I knew it was over like 2 months ago. I knew it was when Trump said we're locked and loaded, as people started protesting. I knew it was over. I knew it was just going to be a matter of time. We just think the best outcome for these people, even IRGC members, but then IRGC members are a bit different because, but at the end of the day, look, I want everyone to defect to the people, because at the end of the day, you're going to have 10, 20 million people in that country that are either used to be pro-Islamic supporters or they are, Islamic extremists or sectarian Muslims, whatever. We can't deny that. There's still like 10 to 20% of Iran's population that are like that. We cannot just exile those people. We cannot just kill those people. So we have to find a way to live with them. And then the best way they can find a way to live with us is to have our back now.
Yeah. Now, do you think that Iran could fall into chaos or civil war after this? Is there a risk that Iran could break into multiple regions? Like, what are your thoughts on
No,
that?
as I said, I hope not. But then there is a risk of that happening. As a political analyst, you have to make these calculations. But I think because majority of the people are behind Shah Reza Pahlavi, and because we have a united figure and a united flag, I don't think that will happen. Okay? But there's a risk of that happening with the Kurds, with the Lurs, with the Afghans in the country, with the Turks, with the Persians. But I really don't hope that doesn't happen. I really hope. But if I had to give it a chance, maybe 10 to 20% chance that might happen, I would give it, 60, 70, 80% chance that we would stay united under one leader. But it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to downplay the fact that I'm not trying to be a negative kind of thing, because I think this is a very positive outcome for the country for this to happen. But we have to be aware of the risks, because we still have the MEK. We still have a lot of different groups in that country. And whether Shah Reza can manage that, or whether the American army can manage that, because Pahlavi can only enter the country with American oversight, with American oversight, with Israel oversight. He can't do it by himself. So my message to the world would be, let's keep Iran united under one leader, and let's keep his territorial integrity for now. And then in 2 or 3 years' time, we can decide what we're going to do.
Now, if the Islamic Republic falls, how does the Middle East change overnight? Do you think that the entire network of their proxies collapses right away? Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, all of them. Do you think it just collapses, or do you think that that would take more time?
I think you cannot kill an idea. The idea will still remain, unfortunately, but then you will kill the pipeline that feeds them. And I think once the Middle East sees the prosperity that peace can bring to the Middle East, the money it can bring for people, the same thing that happened in UAE and in Saudi happening now, it's going to happen to Iran, and it's going to have a ripple effect for the whole entire Middle East. So once people see that, they will probably have this soul searching within them, even the Islamic extremists. So like, do I really want to be living in bunkers and in tunnels and killing innocent people like a terrorist? Or do I just want to have a normal life and earn money? And I think, no, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be a slow death. It's like not giving someone food or water, eventually they're going to die. So I think that's going to happen, what's going to happen with the proxies.
If you could send a message to the Iranians inside Iran right now, what would it be? And the Iranians outside of Iran?
Okay, so to the Iranians inside of Iran, I would say stay militant, stay vigilant. Don't go out of your house yet because there's a lot of bombs dropping. But I'm sure as soon as the time comes, Trump and Netanyahu will tell you to come out. And I think you need to finish the job from inside. Exactly what you've done. You're a brave, intelligent, powerful people. Finish the job from inside. And for the Iranians outside is to keep doing your activism, keep speaking for Iranian people, keep standing up to these Islamic extremists and these Western commentators that say somehow there's a negative thing. Say, no, there's a positive thing, and we're celebrating it from the bottom of my hearts. We can't wait for Iran to be freed.
Yes, I want to ask you one last question. What kind of personal consequences did you go through for speaking out about this for so long? I know they've been trying to hack you and all these different things. Maybe you can speak out about what you went through to get to this point.
Well, to be honest with you, I had many different issues ever since I started because I spoke about Islamic extremism in the UK. I got a lot of death threats from these Islamists saying they're going to behead me, they're going to kill me, blah, blah, blah. Right, wrote that way, went on TV. Then I started speaking, becoming more and more sort of famous in my own lane. And, other people, they were giving me accusations of being Islamic Republic spy, which is the most stupid thing ever. But I didn't respond to this. I ended up going to Israel 3 times and America. And then people started realizing that, if this guy's been to Israel, Israelis are not stupid. They clearly done a background check on this guy. Then when I came back, they said I'm a Mossad spy. And then I was attacked in the streets of London based on this lie that I'm a Mossad spy, which is completely untrue. Then they tried to hack my Instagram accounts, my email, my Apple ID, even my bank. Can you imagine? So I had to change. I mean, I got a new property in London, but because in my old property, I was thinking maybe people find my address. So I had to change my property. I have a new property now. So I had to face these consequences. But has it been worth it? Yes, it has been. Because at the end of the day, I feel like it has given us the result that we wanted. When I started this, actually, I had people like my family members, my girlfriend telling me, don't do this. You're going to put yourself in harm's way. I lost friends because of this. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with what I done. Would I do it again? Yes, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for your courage, for speaking out, for the millions out there that you helped. Thank you for that. You want to leave us with a final message? What do you want the world to understand about the Iranian people, not the Islamic regime, but who Iranians are? Because the world doesn't see it. It hasn't
Yeah.
seen it for a very long time.
So Iranians are some of the most open-minded people in the world. All these values such as democracy comes out of Iran. It comes out from Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great has the first Bill of Human Rights in the world. So we don't have any imported values such as democracy. We actually exported these values to the world. So I think it's going to be in the benefit of the whole world once Iran is freed. Why? Because it's going to be a massive investment opportunity. You're going to have this beautiful culture blossoming and exporting his ideas. You can get to travel to Iran and then look what they've done to Dubai, for example. Look how the whole world is going. I always say Iran can be Dubai times 1,000. It's in everyone's benefit that Iran is freed, least of all Iranian people.
Younes, thank you. Thank you for your time. And hopefully we can see a free Iran very soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this. You can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.